listening to the Construction Big Breakfast, where we give you a hearty serving of insider tips and business strategies to help fuel your day so you can thrive in the construction industry. Now, here's your host from Invennt.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Construction Big Breakfast. And today my special guest is Monica. Monica, welcome. Great to see you. It's been a while since we sort of had any sort of face-to-face, sort of whatever face-to-face means these days. But do you want to introduce yourself to our listeners and watchers?
Thanks, Ben. And yeah, you're right. It's been a while since we've seen each other. So my name's Monica Mwanje. I've got my own consultancy, Creative Solutions, and I work with lots of engineering and construction companies, helping them to win more business. So focused on business development and organizational development as well.
And still sort of focused on nuclear, or are you branched out to other industries?
Primarily and predominantly, can I say that? Yeah, primarily and predominantly still working in the nuclear sector. So yeah, as you said, I've been in nuclear now nearly 17 years. So from graduate through to not graduate, I guess, is one way to put it.
Well, because you're an engineer by background, aren't you?
I am, yeah. So I did chemical engineering at university and then got a place on the, as it was then, British Nuclear Fuels BNFL graduate scheme as a graduate chemical engineer. So worked in engineering, technical projects, left BNFL or Sellafield as it had, because it had a name change at that point. Left there, moved out to work for engineering companies. And that was probably where I started doing a lot more of the, getting more in touch with business development, but not so much until my last job before I set up my consultancy, which was, I guess I had that transition from sort of full-time engineering or technical peer review to doing more of the strategic and business and organizational development work that I do now.
It's amazing, isn't it, how often the SLCs change their names. I mean, I was with Magnox for 10 years, but I joined Magnox, then worked for Magnox North, then worked for Magnox South, and then finished back with Magnox. Sort of, don't know. There were various reasons for those name changes, but it's just constantly, what's it called today? Anyway, never mind that. The most important question of the day, Monica, what did you have for breakfast?
I had some whole grain toast and some water. Probably not very exciting, but it's what I had.
Well, no, that's all right. I mean, we get a wide range of answers from sort of fry-ups to nothing. Every now and again, we get guests who are intermittent fasters. Who sort of skip breakfasts, and my answer is always the same. It's very boring. I had porridge. I say all the time I should have something more, more interesting when I do a podcast, but never quite get round to it. Never mind. Anyway, the what made me reach out and get you on the podcast is I saw that recently you've set up the and sorry if I get it wrong, but it's the Nuclear Diversity and Inclusion Network. Is that right? Almost.
Kind of. You've got the keywords there, which is good. So it shows that at least something's landed. So yeah. So in 2019, I co-founded Diversity and Inclusion in UK Nuclear. So in essence, what it is it's a group just to provide support and access to information and resources for different managers, leaders, people within the nuclear sector. So it's just very much around having, I guess, that peer-to-peer network where you can maybe go and ask a question or go read an article or see articles from the sectors that might be useful with regards to your own inclusion and diversity journeys in your organisation.
What made you decide that sort of last year was the time that you'd start something like this? Was it personal experience? Was it the questions you were being asked, or was it because it's becoming more important to demonstrate when you're winning work and stuff like that, that you have this sort of diverse and inclusive culture and strategy?
It was a mix of the first two for sure. So very much around sort of different questions people have asked me over the years. I was noticing more people asking questions around, well, I'm now managing a more diverse team, for example, and they always felt like there was a bit of a gap in terms of, well, where can I ask some of these questions, or what are other companies doing and what's going on? What have you seen? You work out in the supply chain and with different people. Also, a lot of people recognise the fact that I'm a Black female engineer who's worked in the nuclear sector, which is the complete opposite of that demographic. So it's sort of drawing, I'll be honest about it. So it's drawing on
You're still relatively young as well, so that's sort of all the boxes of not a normal sort.
You say relatively young. It's like I don't feel young some days, but yeah. So there's also that, I think, reflection on my own career and sort of understanding a little bit more around why things haven't shifted maybe as much as they could do, and it was just having those discussions. And then also it's, you go to more conferences and exhibitions, well, sort of pre-COVID, maybe, all the face-to-face events and conferences. And I know you've been to probably some of the similar ones that I've been to. And there's always some really nice speeches, and there's always some really nice conversations, and people always talk about we need to become more inclusive, we need to become more diverse. And then it kind of seems to stop. And then it kind of comes back around again, and it's kind of, well, how do we actually make that happen? What do good actions look like? And like I said before, what have other organisations done? So it was very much around saying, well, in the nuclear industry, there's some existing initiatives that already fulfil some aspects in terms of identity. So you've got Women in Nuclear, which is obviously supporting the nuclear sector deal, which has a target for the industry to have 40% women by 2030. Yes, I got that right. I always think I mixed up the two numbers, but no, 40% by 2030. And then you've got things like the Young Generation Network, which is obviously providing that support with regards to pushing down the age demographic. So for people who aren't as familiar with nuclear, it's kind of had a bit more of a, I guess it's fair to say, older age demographic than maybe
when
with...
I was there, and I was involved with sort of the decommissioning sector and sort of pulling stuff down, and not occasionally, you'd always have someone who'd sort of help build these buildings, and so, well, that's impressive that you lasted this long sort of in the job. But it was, nuclear has always been in very much a sort of job for life around the patch, hasn't it? So you do have people who've been sort of boys and men, sort of all sort of through their career, seen different things. So it's important, like you say, that we attract. And I think that that's the missing part often, isn't it, in the speeches that you see at these conferences. It's about they're very good at how they're trying to improve sort of what they do with the people they've got, but less so about how they then attract the next generation and a diverse next generation.
Yeah, I feel the conversation is shifting, and there is more coming from different organisations. And I think, we are having more open discussions around LGBTQ, for example, seeing more companies actively supporting Pride and Pride Month, which a couple of years ago, people didn't even mention those words or do anything about it. So things are starting to shift, and this initiative is just one of the things to help people, really, just to say, yeah, here's maybe a bit of information that could help you as you're trying to figure this out, and you're not alone. Because I think sometimes you can feel like, are we the only ones who've got this issue, or I don't quite understand? And it can be nice to have a forum where you can, like I say, go seek out information or go ask a question, and hopefully someone else can jump in and help you.
Have you seen over the years and through your career things sort of improving? Have you had sort of barriers that you've had to overcome that I might not have had if I'd have been in the same place?
I think because we're now starting to have more open dialogue around some of the issues, I think I'm noticing that there feels like there's a different energy, that there is a wanting to really shift things. I think because, like I said, we are starting to have not just discussions around race, particularly with things that have gone on in the past few weeks. That's really brought that back to the fore, and people are now more openly having discussions and saying we actually need to address, for example, racial equality within our inclusion plans and in our strategies. But there's also people recognising actually we've not done so much around disability, for example, and other aspects. So I feel like people are starting to pick up and saying, well, the workforce we want to have, what we want to reflect, we look at society, and making strides to get through that. In terms of the different career barriers I've faced, I mean, yes, there's been a number, there has been a number, and I think sort of reflecting on the way my career progressed and the people who helped me, supported me, sponsored me in the sense of sort of advocating for my career or advocating for me to have access to certain roles, that's what made the difference. It was people who didn't just sort of keep quiet about saying, no, she is good enough to do that. They actually almost put their neck on the line to push me forward. And it kind of needs more people doing that. If they notice that maybe someone is capable of something, you need people to also respond to your energy, ambition and enthusiasm with helping you actually access those opportunities, because you can be the best person in the world, you can be absolutely amazing at your job, but if actually there is a blocker and you're not going to get to see that next promotion or that next assignment that's going to help you develop the skills to then maybe potentially access a promotion if that's what you're after, then things become stagnant, and then you kind of get left with two choices of, well, do you just keep going as you are, maybe you're unhappy about it, or do you think actually maybe I'll go somewhere else where I'm more valued? So
try and sort of move to maybe other industries with better reputations and things like that as well. And then sort of it's that we always talk about sort of the lack of good talent joining the industry. The last thing we want to do is sort of make people leave because they don't feel appreciated and rewarded accordingly. So in the nuclear industry, there is a sort of a gathering sort of shift in what the future looks like. We've got hopefully sort of exciting times ahead of us with modular reactors, lots of question marks about what new build will look like moving forward. And I guess sort of post-COVID, what might help with achieving some of these sort of what are ambitious targets, the 40% sort of women by 2030. But if we are more open to working from home, which has always been a bit of a, I had 3 laptops at one point in Magnox because of security restrictions. But if these things are being sort of eased, it should be a more inclusive and easier to get into industry, because it's hard enough to get people to go to Trousfynydd, Sellafield, Hunterston and all these places, Doonray, as it is anyway. But if you're more flexible in where and how you work, surely that'll help as well.
Yes, and that's something that came up in the conference last month. So for people listening or watching this, we had our second Diversity and Inclusion in UK Nuclear conference, and we held it online this year. And a couple of the speakers did mention about how the shift to remote working because of COVID is, obviously opening up the fact that there is that demonstration now that it is possible for people to work from home. So that should hopefully translate into opportunity to recruit from a broader demographic than before, and to re-engage with people who maybe might not necessarily be able to travel as much because of, say, home caring situations or home caring arrangements or commitments. Because you're right, a lot of the sites are in fairly remote locations that maybe aren't always necessarily as accessible for everybody, and we all have lives, we all have other commitments and things going on, so sometimes the opportunity doesn't fully quite work out for you. But now we can potentially see a shift that enables more people to get involved and more talent to come and add their skills to the mix.
So you said as part of this sort of peer-to-peer network that you're trying to build, that you're sort of pointing people in the direction of what good looks like. Is that just within the industry, or are you looking at other industries and seeing what sort of nuclear construction and the likes can learn from other places? It's
the latter. So it's very much, well, this is like some examples of what other organisations have done. And I should obviously caveat this and say, you can look at different examples that different organisations are doing. You can look at some of the actions they put in place, but obviously actually developing inclusion and looking at the diversity across your organisation will obviously always have to be tailored, tailored to the people that you've got within it. So these are things that can help to inspire. So yes, we don't just sort of look within nuclear, we look for examples from anywhere, whether it's from tech to fashion to construction more broadly to food. It's if there's something that we think has got some good information in it and it's like, okay, yeah, that's helpful, let's help amplify it so that maybe it crosses someone's desk and it helps them connect the dots on something they've been mulling over, then it's done its job really.
No, and I think the important thing that I think people are realizing now is that it's not sort of work to do to tick boxes and make people feel sort of, there is real benefit to having a diverse and inclusive workforce. I'm lucky in Invennt, and I know it's easy for me because of sort of who I am to sort of say, yeah, we're very diverse, but it does feel like, we have, 50-50-ish on gender, and we've got people from all around the world, from all different religions, all looking at things from a slightly different perspective that really helps sort of you grow as an individual, and helps you really grow as a team and how you look at things. And I think it's important that people realise the sort of, the real benefit that comes from it, not just do it for the sake of doing it.
100% agree. Sorry. I was just thinking, because it's so warm, I'm just constantly sipping water, and I thought, bet you he's going to want me to speak. But you're right, it's that different approach and that different perspectives. And I have to say, when I've worked on sort of teams or projects where we've got people from around the globe, and sometimes that has been remotely as well, sort of before all of the working situation we're in now, just seeing the different approach and just how understanding how you could say something in one way that can be maybe more of a quite British colloquialism that maybe doesn't always resonate when you're working in an international team. And likewise, you may have a colleague from somewhere else who says something a certain way, and you're looking at them and you're like, I don't really know what's going on, but then you find a way to work together. You realize and things don't get as lost in translation, for example, because you're actually building that connection and you're building those bonds so that you can work together effectively, which is what every team does, regardless of where people are from. If you're going to be high performing, you find a way to bring out the best in each other.
Yeah, definitely. So what are your sort of short-term or long-term hopes for sort of your network and more sort of blue sky for the industry?
Just get the nice easy questions in there. So in terms of the initiative, I mean, if I look at sort of what we've achieved over the past 12 months, so we started just after we had like a conversation in, I think it was December 2018, and then we set up the initiative in, I think it was February 2019, and we started as a LinkedIn group. That's since grown, and we've got like a website. And sort of the social media presence. We held a conference last year where it was face-to-face, but obviously it was permissible then. And we had about, how many people did we have? We had about 60 or 70 people coming live. And then we sort of set some goals around, we took the listening and feedback from people who attended the conference, saying, well, actually, it's more the practical. Well, what can we do? What are the examples? How do we actually make this happen for ourselves? So we said, okay, well, maybe we need to look at bringing some training and support a little bit more broadly. So we set up with a collaboration with Equal Engineers to look at taking one of their workshops national on like a roadshow tour in 2020. And we set the target of getting 1,000 people through that training in 2020. So we started off, then obviously COVID came, and we're like, okay, this is a little bit of a blocker, but the training has been reformatted and it's now back, it's available. It's online, so a little plug for people. Please go check out the website. There's information there. So we're still aiming for that target.
That's free training available to anyone who goes on the website, is it?
The training is with Equal Engineers, and there's now backing from ECITB. So for in-scope ECITB organisations who are working on nuclear projects, but please go and check the wording. Then there is some funding available as long as they hit all the certain ECITB criteria. Then people can get access to that workshop, and the costs will be covered by ECITB if they're eligible. So that's one thing that we're doing this year, which is great. And like I said, we held our conference online last month, and we had over 400 people joining us. So a bit of a leap from sort of 60 to 70 to over 400. But I think obviously with it being online, I think that helped more people who maybe couldn't have travelled to it last year to come to it this year. So we're sort of still going through all the learning from that, looking at the feedback we've had, and we're going to sort of regroup and then sort of look at what additional goals we need to set once we've had a chance to sort of go through all of the feedback and the questions, because we got a lot of questions during the event, which we did not get through, but we are working through them now. So we'll see what we're going to do, and then sort of what some more appropriate goals are on top of obviously still rolling out the workshop training and still continuing to sort of share things via our newsletter and the other things that we do online. That's
great though that you had such a large audience, but also such an engaged audience. It really shows that there's a sort of a willing and a want out there to be better and do better.
100% agree. I was really, really surprised because I guess you have that feeling of, okay, like when you're maybe going to a party or you organise a party, you're going to be the only one there. And and it was a little bit. And at first, when we were sort of behind the scenes and getting set up and ready, and then we're like, and like you can see on the thing, oh, has anyone logged on? And it was like us. So we're like, okay, well, there's two of us, that's good. Then like a couple of people came in, then suddenly it just kept going up and up and up. And it was like, okay. And then when it started, we were like, well, what if no one asked questions? And you're poised ready to sort of get discussion going. But then the questions came and they kept coming. And it was just, I was refreshing the screen and I was just like, oh my goodness. So it was great. And it was good. And like I say, looking through the kinds of questions people are asking, that gives us a steer on maybe, what we can maybe do next. So it's actually of use rather than it just being something that doesn't really add anything to anybody. So, yeah.
Good. And then we're sort of approaching the sort of the half-hour mark. So you're not going to get out of it. I'm going to ask again. So what are your sort of hopes and aspirations for the industry then? When it comes to sort of diversion, inclusivity, and just generally sort of where is the nuclear industry going?
I think in terms of inclusion and diversity, I think it'd be nice for it to just become a lot more routine. And by that, I mean that it's really truly embedded into how we lead, how we set up our projects, how we look at our supply chains, how we go about our business, that it's kind of almost that second nature, but without it being complacent, because obviously if you become complacent about things, you kind of take your eye off proceedings as well. So about it just being something where it's the way we do things, I think is my goal. And for it to just, I think of all the wonderful people who maybe I've worked with in the past who've since left the industry, whether it's because they've become for example, mothers, and they found it difficult to sort of stay in touch with their job or, other aspects of their lives. And I think, wouldn't it be great if we can maybe bring some of them back into the fold, or other amazing people? And I also think, well, what about the people I could work with, because we've done this. So I think that'll be really, really good. I think in terms of the industry, I think seeing it as part of the energy mix moving forward. But I also think in terms of, how do I phrase this? I think just having, I guess, more connection with people, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions around the sector still. And if I'm blunt, I think some of that is down to some of the ways in which, and I've been guilty of it as well in the past, the ways we think we're communicating when actually we're not actually really listening to people. We're not actually really putting stuff across in a way that it works for them. So I think,
yeah, I mean, I often say we need to demystify the industry. We've made it sound complicated for the right reasons at times, but now it's sort of too difficult. I see people complaining about certain things, like fuel shipments and stuff like that, and I go, well, that's been happening for like 30-40 years. If anything, now it's safer than it's ever been. You just don't quite understand why and how and these type of things. So I think maybe that's a sort of a subject of another podcast we can do. We can sort of talk about, well, how do we actually humanize and demystify nuclear and make people realize that it could be sort of an important mix of a part of the energy mix. It's not just about wind turbines.
I think it's very much around the mix. And I think your point there about saying how it's safer, we know that because we've worked in the industry and we've seen firsthand and understand a lot of the procedures. But for people who don't have that knowledge, it's, and if they've seen certain TV shows and that's been their only contact point with the industry, then it's and nobody else is filling that void. How is anyone meant to know what's going on?
Yeah, no, I know. I tell people that you get exposed to more radiation if you walk up Snowdon or get an X-ray, those type of things. And the odd person's turned to me and told me that's propaganda. I was like, oh, don't be daft.
If we move this discussion into that topic, I think we'll be here all day. And I think considering the current climate with news, propaganda, etc., that could be another lengthy discussion.
Yeah.
on
Right,
its
well,
own for sure.
there we go. We've got a series of podcasts that we can do then, Monica. That'd be great. So thank you very much for joining me today. Hopefully next time it will be a bit cooler.
Honestly,
A bit more bearable.
do you know, I think I've chosen the warmest room to sit in, and it's just, yeah. But no, Stacey, thank you. It's nice to catch up, and here's me thinking, oh yeah, it'll just be one podcast, but yeah, I might come
Definitely.
back.
So yeah, thank you very much for everyone out there listening and watching. A few things that Monica's discussed, they'll be available sort of in the bio or wherever they sort of normally go. And if you've enjoyed this conversation, make sure that you like and subscribe to the podcasts so that you can hear all about our next episodes and whenever Monica does come back. So thank you very much, and see you all soon.